In 2014, the world came to know the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, as it suddenly appeared all over the world with bloody takeovers in Iraq and the Middle East. ISIS became famous for its extreme cruelty. It cut off the heads of prisoners, forced captives into slavery, and destroyed anything that did not agree with their extreme beliefs. In August 2014, the small Yazidi ethnic group would face the full power of this brutality. Today, on a day in history, we explore a tale of slavery, extreme wickedness, and mass murder in the 21st century genocide of the Yazidis of Iraq. If the topic of this video is interesting to you, consider subscribing and checking out the other videos on this channel, and leave a like to show your appreciation. Not many people have heard of the Yazidis. After all, even the highest guesses place their world population at no more than 1.5 million or as low as 700,000. The Yazidis are a small Kurdish ethnic group who have traditionally lived in small areas of the place, known informally as Kurdistan in Iraq, although today, they also have a scattered population of a few 100,000 around the world. The history of the Yazidis mirrors that of other Kurdish peoples. Repeated persecution from the many states and empires who have ruled over them. But despite it all, they have kept their own communities, language, culture, and religion. This Yazidi religion is unique. They believe in one God, but are not Abrahamic like Christians or Muslims. Instead, their religion takes more from the ancient Persian Zoroastrian faith. This religion has been a main reason for their persecution. Muslim rulers have oppressed them as non-believers, and Yazidi persecution has not been met with the same sympathy in the Christian world that fell upon people like the Armenians. In the shadow of such terrifying tales, the importance of security and freedom, both physical and digital, becomes ever clearer. In today's connected world, private internet access, our sponsor, offers the world's most transparent VPN service with incredible benefits. Using Wi-Fi at restaurants, airports, or even at home can leave your data open to attack. A VPN hides your IP address, scrambles your internet connection, and protects your digital life from spying eyes. Going online without PIA is like walking through a rainstorm without an umbrella. Sooner or later, you'll get wet. But PIA is more than just a security shield with great scrambling. It is a key to unlimited digital access. Want to continue watching the Top Gear series available only in the USA on your family trip abroad? With PIA, you can do it with just a click. Get past location blocks to enjoy global content from Netflix specials and live sports events to special deals in specific regions for clothing, travel, and games. With 91 countries and 50 US states to choose from, change your IP address and access location-specific content and services. PIA has a no-logs policy, meaning it does not store your data, and is also one of the few VPNs that support peer-to-peer file sharing. Secure your whole household with one PIA subscription that covers unlimited devices across all platforms at the same time. Use our link in the description for an 83% discount. Just $2.23 a month plus 4 extra months free. With PIA, keep your digital life private and secure. When ISIS came in 2014, they saw the Yazidis as little more than devil worshippers. On August 1st, 2014, ISIS began its deadly August attack through the Nineveh plains of northern Iraq. The Yazidis were directly in their path, especially in the city of Sinjar. In the months before, ISIS had earned worldwide fame for their brutality, and the people of Sinjar already knew there would be no mercy. The Kurdish militias defending the city were no match for the fighters and were forced to run away. Tens of thousands of Yazidis tried to escape the city, but not all of them would make it before ISIS forces captured it on August 3rd. Hundreds of men were massacred. In the following days, those who were not killed were sent to prison, inevitably to be executed later. The Iraqi government reported that ISIS had dug mass graves around the city and were even burying victims alive. In short, it was hell on earth for those unlucky residents trapped in the city. Farah was one such resident of Sinjar. He and his family tried to escape ISIS, but his father and brother got separated from the others and captured by the fighters. The attackers marched Farah, his father and brother, and almost 80 other men to a nearby field where they were made to line up for the inevitable mass killing. Farah was forced to watch as his father and brother were gunned down in front of him. In a desperate try for survival, Farah dropped to the ground as the shooting continued, pretending that he had been shot. The man next to him fell on top of him, and his dead body shielded Farah from the gunfire and attention of the killers. Farah lay in the pile of dead bodies for over an hour until the ISIS fighters left. There was nothing he could do but run for the mountains. Miraculously, he managed to escape, but he later learned he was the only one. After getting separated, the rest of his family had been taken by ISIS, never to be seen again. ISIS forces hunted in the villages around Sinjar, hunting down Yazidis who remained, killing the men while taking the women and children as captives. The village of Hardin, for example, was almost completely wiped out when ISIS arrived. 60 men were executed while their wives and daughters were taken away to an ISIS prison to be sold as slaves and war brides. A UN report identified a sadly vague list of villages and casualty numbers in the area of Sinjar. Between August 3rd and 6th alone, 100 Yazidis were killed in the village of Kojo, 50 in another village, dozens on the road near another village, and as many as 300 in other villages around Hardin. The report also identified an estimated 200 refugees killed by ISIS mortars as they fled along roads out of the region. Most of these reports were gathered from the eyewitness stories of survivors or put together when the mass graves were discovered months later. One of the single worst mass killings happened at Kocho village on August 15th. Every Yazidi male above the age of 10 was rounded up in the local school and loaded onto trucks to be taken to the execution place. As many as 400 men were executed in a single day as ISIS wiped out the village. The surviving women and children were once again taken away as captives. The Yazidis who escaped ISIS's grasp were by no means safe either. Aside from losing their homes, communities, and loved ones, tens of thousands were forced into a dangerous, sometimes deadly, journey into the Sinjar Mountains to reach safety. As thousands fled, supplies of food and fresh water in the region simply could not support the flood of people. The mountainous land made it difficult for Iraqi and UN forces to bring relief supplies in by land or air, and the risk of chase or shelling by ISIS forces only made things more difficult. Within days of the attack on Sinjar, UNICEF reported the deaths of 40 children from dehydration among the refugees. Hundreds more would join them over the following weeks as exposure, starvation, dehydration, and ISIS attacks claimed more lives. ISIS's goals against the Yazidi were not political or strategic, but religious. They believed the Yazidi were evil devil worshippers and had to be destroyed. It is this that raises the events from merely massacre to outright genocide. ISIS wanted to destroy the Yazidis as a people, and one way to do that was forced conversion. Many captured Yazidis were given a simple choice: convert or die. ISIS proudly pumped out propaganda videos of Yazidis praying in mosques after promising to kill them if they did anything less. They also proudly posted videos online of what happened to Yazidis who refused. Many Yazidis stood by their beliefs in a hopeless attempt to keep their people alive. ISIS targeted Yazidi shrines and holy sites along with anyone who defended them, hoping to break their spirit. In late August, 14 elderly Yazidi men were executed for trying to stop ISIS fighters from destroying the Sheikh Mani shrine. Their fight was useless, and the fighters blew it up after they were all dead. On the same day as the Kocho massacre, Yazidi captives held in Tel Afar prison were given that choice of conversion or execution. According to one survivor, 200 Yazidi men chose to stay with their own faith and were promptly killed. ISIS had the same goal of cultural genocide for the women and children. The children were taken from their parents and sent away to places like Mosul, where they would be taught the ways of Islam. UN sources found some of these stolen children in Mosul afterwards, along with mountains of evidence of physical and sexual attacks. Many were traumatized after watching ISIS murder their parents before taking them. Women were given less of a choice in conversion and were essentially forced to do so. Adult women were given traditional Islamic clothes to wear, while men who agreed to convert were forced to grow out their beards and adopt traditional Islamic practices. ISIS made sure they attended mosques and were, in their words, properly monitored to ensure they did everything right. On top of execution and forced conversion, ISIS used sexual violence, forced marriages, and slavery to destroy the Yazidis. Kidnapped women were subject to invasive inspections to determine if they were virgins. If during their inspections any of the kidnapped girls were found to already be pregnant, ISIS forced them to have abortions. Dozens of Yazidi women lost their children that way. One eyewitness remembered seeing her friend being taken away for a forced abortion and returning too traumatized and in pain to talk or walk. It was another part of genocide by erasing the next generation of Yazidi children to be replaced with children born from the new forced marriages. Many of these captured Yazidi women and girls were forced into marriage with their captors. This marriage was only the beginning of their suffering, and the girls were often passed around between fighters to be abused. One survivor who managed to reach a refugee camp said that the ISIS fighters believed that raping a woman 10 separate times would convert her into being a Muslim. She had suffered at least a dozen separate men abusing her in such a way. Those who were not handed directly to the ISIS fighters were offered for sale as slaves in the group's slave markets. It is thought that ISIS offered the girls for sale to make themselves popular with the young men in the areas they controlled and make them more likely to support or join them. ISIS held slave markets in cities where women and girls were paraded around and sold to the highest bidders to act as unwilling wives and sex slaves. They were inspected like animals by possible buyers in public or sold online with pictures of the girls, some, in their words, barely out of elementary school, shared on private social media channels to other ISIS members. To the ISIS fighters, the Yazidis religion was a good enough reason for the treatment. In a statement released by the group, they celebrated the, in their words, large-scale enslavement of idolater families and called it the first act of its kind since the abandonment of Islamic law. In a chilling report by the New York Times, they recorded one ISIS fighter who insisted that the Quran gave him the holy right to rape non-Muslim girls. One of his child victims later spoke to Times reporters about her experience after 11 months of horrific captivity. He said that by raping me, he is drawing closer to God, she told them. Another victim offered a similar explanation about her ISIS captor. He said that raping me is his prayer to God. A few girls tried to escape, and even fewer succeeded. 18-year-old Lamia Haji Bashar was one of the few successful ones. Captured when she was just 16, Lamia was sold between multiple ISIS men, abused repeatedly, and forced to make bombs for the terrorists. After almost 2 years as a prisoner, she managed to escape with 2 other girls. It was not an easy escape, though. Both of her companions, a 20-year-old woman and an 8-year-old girl, were killed when they triggered a landmine during their escape. The explosion left Lamia scarred and blind in one eye, but she was saved by a rescuer. "Thanks to God, I managed to get away," she later told the Associated Press. "Even if I had lost both eyes, it would have been worth it because I have survived them." The Yazidi genocide was an intense, although somewhat short, outbreak of genocidal violence. By the end of August, most Yazidis had fled to safety, and those who had not had either been killed, enslaved, or forced to convert. The ISIS occupation of Sinjar continued until they were driven out by Iraqi and Kurdish forces in 2017. But it was small comfort for the people who had once called it home. Over 80% of those who fled in 2014 chose not to return. One could hardly blame them. The region was destroyed. Their homes were ruined. Active bombs littered the roads and buildings. Not to mention the mass graves, each containing dozens or hundreds of their people, that returning residents and liberating forces have been discovering there ever since. For many, the ordeal continued long after 2014. Around a third of the captured Yazidi women and girls have still not been found. Some have been lucky enough to escape or be freed by security forces, and on rare occasion, ISIS itself released them for one reason or another. But the fate of many is unknown. What little we do know is as horrifying as one might expect. As recently as 2020, The scattered ISIS fighters had taken to black market organ trading, selling captured Yazidi women by body parts on WhatsApp and Telegram groups, or offering the girls for ransom to their families for tens of thousands of dollars. The near total destruction of ISIS in 2019 can be taken as some sort of justice. In November 2021, one of the ISIS members who took part in the genocide, Taha al-Jumaili, became the first ISIS member convicted for crimes against the Yazidi after a trial in Germany. Germany is home to the largest community of Yazidis outside of Iraq, and the legacy of what happened remains strong even half a world away. One 2017 study of Yazidis living in Germany found that almost a third of Yazidis there knew someone who had been a victim of the genocide. In the end, an estimated 5,000 Yazidis were killed, and as many as 10,000 people were kidnapped or enslaved. In raw numbers, it might not stand out alongside genocides against Armenians, Jews, or any number of other groups. But for a community as small as that of the Yazidis, and in such a short space of time, the Yazidi genocide is one of the worst atrocities of the 21st century. And a genocide it was. The forced conversions, abortions, destruction of holy sites, and more were done specifically to erase the Yazidi very existence. With the UN, Iraq, US, EU, UK, Israel, and more all officially recognizing the events as such, it is one of the most widely acknowledged genocides of this century. And with so many women and girls still missing and so many bodies still to be recovered, the emotional and physical ordeal for the Yazidis is far from over. Please subscribe to the Epic Horror Earth channel.